Night shift, Sector C. I used to work night security at a warehouse just outside the city. It wasn't anything special, just a quiet job. Mostly sitting in a small office watching cameras and doing rounds every hour. That's exactly why I took it. My shift was from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. I was alone the entire time. No coworkers, no supervisors, just me. The building and the cameras. The warehouse was divided into 4 sections. They were labeled A through D. Most of them were in use, except for one, Sector C. During my first shift, the supervisor walked me through the building. He showed me the cameras, explained the routine, went over what to do in case of a break-in. Everything was normal until we reached the hallway that leads to Sector C. Didn't go inside. He just pointed down the hallway and said it wasn't in use anymore. Something about old equipment and a partial shutdown. Then he told me I didn't need to check it during my rounds. I asked if the cameras still worked there. He said they didn't work properly. That was it. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. If anything, it meant less work. The first few nights were completely normal, quiet, uneventful. I'd sit in the office, watch the monitors, maybe scroll through my phone. Then once every hour, I'd walk through the building, check doors, make sure everything was locked. Nothing unusual. Until one night, a few days in, it was around 2:30 in the morning. I was watching the cameras when I noticed something. It was the hallway that leads to Sector C. There was a delay. At first, I thought it was just the system lagging. That happens sometimes. But it kept happening. So I decided to test it. I walked into that hallway, stopped, under the camera, looked straight up at it and waved. Then I went back to the office. I watched the monitor, and I saw myself while standing there. Then I waved, but not right. Waitame, there was a delay. It was small, maybe half a second, but it was noticeable. I stood there for a moment, just watching it. It didn't make sense. If it was a connection issue, it should have affected other cameras too. But it didn't. Only that one. I tried to ignore it. The next night, something else happened. Around 3 a.m., I heard a noise. It sounded like metal scraping. Came from somewhere inside the building. Not outside, not near the loading docks, deeper. I stayed in the office at first, just listening. Then I heard it again. Longer this time. Like something heavy being dragged slowly across the floor. I told myself it was nothing. Old buildings make noise, temperature changes, metal shifting. But this didn't sound random. It sounded controlled. Grabbed my flashlight and went to check. Everything looked normal at first. The main corridor was empty. The loading area was clear. All the doors were locked. Then I got closer to the hallway leading to Sector C. That's when I noticed the door. It was slightly open. I was sure I hadn't opened it. And as far as I knew, no one else was supposed to be there. I walked up to it slowly. Pushed. It opened just enough to look inside. It was completely dark. I pointed my flashlight in. It barely reached a few meters. Could see old shelves, dust-covered. Equipment. Nothing obviously out of place. Then I heard something behind me. It sounded like a single step. I turned around immediately. There was nothing there. The hallway was empty. At that point, I wasn't thinking anything supernatural. Thought someone might have gotten into the building. So I went back to the office and checked the cameras. Everything looked normal. Except that same hallway camera. It was still slightly delayed. The next few nights followed the same pattern. Yura Fedenko. The delay stayed. And every now and then, around the same time, I'd hear that metal sound again, always somewhere near Sector C. One night, I decided to check inside again. I don't know why. I guess I wanted to prove to myself it was nothing. I stepped inside Sector C. The air felt still, different from the rest of the building. I moved slowly between the rows of shelves. That's when I noticed something on the floor. Footprints. They weren't mine. They were already there. Faint, but clear enough. They led deeper into the more section. But there were no footprints coming back. That didn't make sense. I crouched down and looked closer. The dust around them was disturbed. Not old, but not completely fresh either. Like they had been made earlier that same night. That's when I called my supervisor. I told him everything. The noise, the door, the camera delay, the footprints. There was a pause. Then he told me to leave that area alone. No questions. Surprise. Just that. That part bothered me more than anything else. It sounded like he already knew. I went back to the office, and that's when I decided to check the footage more carefully. I rewound everything, went through it frame by frame. At exactly 3:11 a.m., I saw something. It was only there for a single frame. A figure, standing in the hallway. It looked like a person, but it was hard to make out clearly. The image was slightly blurred. The proportions looked off. Not enough to say exactly what it was, but enough to know it wasn't supposed to be there. The next frame, it was gone, like it had never been there. I checked the other cameras. Nothing. No movement, no figure. Only that one camera showed it, and only for a single frame. I copied the footage before I left that morning. I didn't really know why. It just felt important. Later that day, I watched it again on my laptop. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The way the figure was standing. I looked exactly like how I stand when I'm in the office watching the monitors. Same posture, same angle. That didn't make sense, because at that exact time, I was in the office, and there are no cameras in there. I went back one more night. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to prove it wasn't real. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Then, at exactly 3:11 a.m., and every camera froze at the same time, except one. The one facing Sector C. At first, nothing moved. Then slowly, something changed in the frame. A figure, standing in the hallway, facing the camera. It didn't move for a few seconds. Then it took one step forward, and the screen went black. A few seconds later, the system came back, so everything looked normal again. The hallway was empty. No movement. No sign that anything had happened. I didn't finish that shift. I left, and I didn't go back. I quit the next day. Still have the footage, and sometimes I watch it again. There's one detail I still can't explain. In the last frame before the screen went black, and the figure wasn't just facing the camera, it was looking slightly down, exactly where I would have been sitting, watching it. I don't know what that was, but I know one thing. I wasn't alone in that building, and whatever was there, I knew exactly where I was.